Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim with Drink a Beer and Play a Game, and today we have a special for you. We're looking at Mortal Kombat 3, but not only Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and Trilogy as well. So this is going to be one of our longest reviews for the Mortal Kombat series, so sit back and enjoy.
Oh boy. Alright, Mortal Kombat 3 originally came out to the arcades in 1995, and within the same year, the arcades also got Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Mortal Kombat Trilogy was a console exclusive that came out in 1996. Today, we're going to be looking at the console versions on the Genesis and Super Nintendo for both 3 and Ultimate 3, and the PlayStation version of Trilogy. Now, the home ports were handled by Williams Entertainment, going off the original arcade ports that were made by Midway. Alright, Mortal Kombat 3. It came out on the Genesis, Super NES, PlayStation, Game Boy, Game Gear, PC, and in Brazil, the Sega Master System. A surprisingly decent port. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 got its home ports onto the Game Boy Advance eventually, but besides that, it was mainly on the Saturn, Genesis, and Super NES. Trilogy came out on the Saturn, the PlayStation, the N64, and the PC, though the N64 version had a lot of stuff cut from it, and we won't be talking about that today.
They're pussies! Woo! Alright, I think I have the most daunting job here, talking about the graphics. Now here's a side-by-side view of all the games and all their versions. I didn't know how else to explain it to you, but let's get a little focused here. Let's start with Mortal Kombat 3. Here's a side-by-side for Super NES and Genesis. And guess what? It's going to stay this way for Ultimate Mortal Kombat. So I'm actually combining them. Now, as you look at the Genesis, you're going to see how grainy it is, and there's a whole lot of color blending going on that it was just trying to match the arcade and Super NES and graphical capabilities, which it really couldn't. I mean, they were trying to throw in animations, foreground objects, background objects. It just didn't work out. We almost would have preferred they kept it different like the previous games and focused more on the sprites. Super NES, to us, looks almost arcade perfect. It's still a little grainy, and the sprites still seem a little small to us, but it looks great. And especially now that you have these transition points in certain stages, adds a whole lot more graphical capabilities that we really enjoyed. And now we're looking at MK Trilogy on the PlayStation. As Jim mentioned, we're not showing the N64 stuff simply because we don't have it. But look at it. This is a year after MK3 came out, so they had time to improve everything. And this is really almost goddamn arcade perfect as you can get. I mean, we didn't have the Dreamcast yet, so it couldn't be quite perfect, but just look at a level like this. All the debris flowing. The motion is just so smooth, and it's a hell of a lot faster than any other game. So on top of all the regular improvements you would expect out of all these fighting games, we also see a few little nice changes, such as different color blood for the cyborgs, for Shiva, different boss characters, and you have these really creative transformations for the animalities that you see. They're pretty goddamn impressive. Even if you don't like the animality, you gotta respect it. So overall, they just improved across the board for Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat 2 was already an awesome game. This just looks a little better. So here's all the scores laid out in front of you. For Mortal Kombat 3 and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on the Genesis, Jim and I both gave it a 7. For the Super NES, we both gave both versions a 9, and for Trilogy, we both gave it a 9. We really wanted to give it a 10, however, the PlayStation we felt probably could have been capable more, especially since this is a year after Mortal Kombat 3, but as you can see, we don't mind it. As far as beer requirement meter is concerned, fuck, I'm putting on 1 beer, and that's just for me for talking so goddamn much.
Alrighty, the sound. Well, they went in a lot different direction with this game. All the, I guess you can say, Oriental style of music from the first 2 games is pretty much gone. It's more Western, it's more, don't want to say techno, but it almost seems more electronic in a lot of ways.
EDM?
Would you EDM me? Anyway, we're going to start with the Genesis. Now, there's probably the most amount of voice work and sound effects in this version than you're going to get in any of the home ports. You have a lot of the screaming, a lot of the sound effects for hits, special moves, fatalities, the voiceovers in general. You get a lot. Unfortunately, the quality just kind of isn't there. The music, it's okay, but you can tell it's just a dumbed down version of the arcade, which is fine, but it's really getting to the point where the superior specs of the Super NES really started to come through, and the Genesis at this point just couldn't keep up. Going off that, the Super NES sounds very clean, very clear. The music's good, if not slightly, I don't want to say weak, but just maybe a tiny bit quieter than on the Genesis version. But it's still really good quality. Same with the voices, everything sounds smooth. And Trilogy, well, it's on a CD, so it's basically arcade perfect as far as sound goes there. You can see the breakdown of scores. Genesis for 3 and Ultimate 3 got 7s, Super NES got 8s, and the PlayStation Trilogy got 9. I'll add 1 beer, just because it's good enough to listen to, even if it isn't my favorite soundtrack in the series.
I'm going to try to keep the control as short as possible. At this point, everybody is super familiar with Mortal Kombat. You know what you need to press to do most of the moves, and you're used to even the block button. Jim.
I will never, ever like the block button. The run button's okay, though.
Damn it, he just stole my point! Ah! So now they do have this neat little run button, which ties in nicely with the new combo system. Yay, all those combo freaks who love chaining together 14 hits. That's good for you. I couldn't do that. I can maybe get a nice 8-hitter in here, but The control is really, really tight and probably the most impressive across any of the Mortal Kombats for home releases up to this point. I don't want to go too much into that because Jim, I'm sure, is going to talk about it. So let me just show you our breakdown of scores. So as you see, Jim and I both felt that the Super NES was just a tiny bit better than the Genesis. We both gave the Genesis 8s, gave the Super NES's 9, and for Trilogy, I gave it a 10, Jim gave it a 9. And I can tell you right now, the only reason I gave it a 10 is I love the way the PS1 controller is, and I think that was just built for fighting games, especially Mortal Kombat games. It's just a preference of mine. I have no problem with the controls. I'm not even going to add a beer. I love it, and I'm definitely not adding a beer for the block button, because it's perfect!
Alright, the gameplay. I'm also going to try and keep this as quick as possible. There's a lot here, and it definitely had a major overhaul, much like the graphics and sound. As we've mentioned, there's a combo system now. Preset commands that can lead to lots of big chain attacks and that do tons of damage. Also the run button, as we've mentioned. Now, in 3, you mainly just have the conquest mode and the multiplayer action, which is fine. They added in the combat codes, which can unlock characters or give you different little variances to each fight, which keeps things interesting. Besides that, there's also a lot of hidden things. You have Smoke as a hidden character, but it's also the first game where you can unlock boss characters in Motaro and Shao Kahn using a code. Ultimate 3 had all this, but they also added 8-player tournaments, Shao Kahn's Lost Treasures, which is it's just extras in the game that you can see, different cutscenes, yada yada yada. Trilogy kind of was a mishmash of everything, though Trilogy also added the aggressor bar. Now, the aggressor bar gets filled up whenever you block or you do attacks, and when it's fully done, you can activate it, and your character becomes stronger and faster for a short period of time. Animalities were also introduced in these games, and while not my favorite kind of finisher in the game, I at least respect what they were going for. Starting with Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, they added in brutalities, which kind of bore us, but to break it down simply, it just puts a huge string of attacks together that makes the character explode. I mean, overall, there's just a lot going on here. You have a ton of characters, more than you've had in any of the other games. Also, even more than other games, the enemy AI is punishing if you don't know what you're doing. They will beat you down fast, they will counter everything, so you have to get your game up if you really want to be able to get through this. Overall, Bri gave 10s for each version, and I gave 9s. It's just a really solid package. Yeah, I don't think I need to add a beer. There's enough going on here that you won't have time to drink.
So let me try and sum up the Originality, as I'm pretty sure you guys have picked it apart throughout the rest of this video. But here it is. With combos, the run button, brutalities, animalities, the aggressor bar, which was introduced in Trilogy, a shit ton of unlockables, a whole bunch more playable modes. This game did offer a lot. Don't get us wrong. We still think this game is really original for adding all that extra content, but it'd just be easier if we show you our breakdowns. For Mortal Kombat 3, we gave it 8s across the board. For Ultimate Mortal Kombat, since that was just really a minor update, we kept it at a 7. Now for Trilogy, we bumped it down to a 4. And before you freak out, why would you do that? So Jim and I, all we really saw was the aggressor bar and more characters unlocked right at the beginning. It didn't offer that much new, but it was the most complete game. As far as beer is concerned, I'm only going to add one beer. Because although we love the shit out of Trilogy, we thought with a year to develop, they could have added just a little bit more to really make it stand out.
Holy crap for playability. This is going to be quick. This has been a long video, so I'm not going to go into everything again. But the fact that it's a long video gives you an idea. There's a ton of stuff going on. By the time you get to Trilogy, you have every single character, and even every variant on the characters as well. With the amount of characters in these games and just the overall stuff that's going on, you can spend hours, hell, even years, just finding new stuff to unlock or new stuff that you like. So, there's a lot going on here. 10s across the board. I'll add a beer just for the sheer amount of stuff that you can do in Ultimate 3 and in Trilogy. We're still playing it all this time, almost 20 years later.
Jesus Christ, 20 years. That makes me feel really fucking old. Ugh. But hey, that's a great testament to how great this game is. Although the game might have minor flaws, this is just me and Jim being as nitpicky as possible. We don't need to tell you how great these games are. Anyone out here who watches this video, you already know. So really, this is just our opinions, and we're trying to pick apart whatever we can. As far as the scores are concerned, let me just show you the breakdown. You'll understand better. I gave MK3 and Ultimate MK3 a 9, whereas Jim gave them 8s. For Trilogy, I gave it a 10, Jim gave it a 9. We both agreed Trilogy is the best game so far in the series, and it actually is one of my personal favorites. Like Jim mentioned, just the sheer amount of characters you have, unlockables, secrets, cheats, you'll never go wrong with this game, and it's one of the cleanest looking MK games out there. So in general, me and Jim are aware that a lot of people think this game has a different feel, and it does, and we can't quite put our finger on what's so different about it, but if you're a huge Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 fan and you switch to 3, there's something there. Me and Jim didn't mind it, and we still really enjoy it to this day. Alright, so here's just a big screen of all the finalized scores for each game. For MK3 on the Genesis, it rounds out to an 8.2. For Ultimate MK3, it rounds out to an 8.1. Now, before I move forward, the reason for the drop is the originality. Everything else was the same, so get used to how we combined our scores. For the Super NES, MK3 came in at 8.8, and Ultimate MK3 came in at 8.7. Clearly, Super NES is better than the Genesis for this game. And for Trilogy, it came in at an 8.6. Now, me and Jim definitely would pick Trilogy over these other versions. However, the way we score it and with that originality thrown in there, this is what it sums up to. But you can't go wrong with this game. Go pick it up. Any one of these versions will do. We just suggest the Trilogy, as long as you stay away from the N64 version. As far as the beer pairing is concerned, we're going to have to go with the Weyerbacher Merry Monks. This is a really strong beer, and it has a ton of flavor. With this much alcohol and flavor, you should really only be taking sips sparingly in between rounds. And as me and Jim mentioned, you'll be playing this game for hours, so you'd probably be good with just 1 or 2 of the big bottles of this. Go grab one and try it out. As always guys, thanks for checking out this video. We always appreciate your support. Make sure you leave some comments, and if you enjoyed it, why not hit subscribe or hit the like button. Be sure to share us with your friends as we keep trying to grow. Keep checking in every day for more Mortal Kombat content. Till next time guys, cheers.